please tell me about this John Carpenter book you've contributed to?
Yeah, hello, Michael. It's nice to talk to you again. We had the pleasure sometimes in the future. And now, again, there's a nice reason because, yeah, I co-edited this nice book on John Carpenter. Horror and Apocalypse is the subtitle in German. It's a German book. I co-edited it with Pelle Felsch and Andreas Rauscher, who are my colleagues, and my best wishes to them. And yeah, this book, I think it was necessary to do a German kind of mixture of academic and film critical book on John Carpenter because we already had some image-based books, but not really analytical stuff. It was like 20 or 30 years back that in German there was a book published on him. So I think this book was born out of this necessity. And it was built up over several years. As you might be aware of, the German market is not the biggest market in the world, and you cannot sell it all over the place. So German language is mainly focused on Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. So it is a relatively small market. And so this has the advantage, it is easy to promote because a lot of people will likely be aware of it. But at the same time, the audience is not that big. And yeah, we had to move some things to get this going. But the publisher, Deadline, is a magazine in Germany. It's one of the few printed magazines by 2 months. Every 2 months it's published. And it's focusing on genre cinema and genre home media. So it is the perfect publishing house for this. And as you might see, this is a hardbound volume. And it's in full color. I will show you like this nice German
Ooh.
poster of the fork, for example. And it has a lot of press material on John Carpenter films in it. The rest is mainly academic-based analytical texts on certain aspects of his work, like the masculinity in his films, the Western relations within his science fiction, for example, and the idea of the gaze, like being observed, and the voyeur as a key element, and such things. So you have different articles on these topics and one discussion between me and the other editors. So we discuss his whole work. And then we have two interviews, which is really like a strange thing because one I did with a friend, and we sent some questions to Carpenter's office, and he actually answered, but his answer, as you might guess, are very short. And then we have another, which was done in person, another interview in person some years back. And there his answers are a little bit longer, but he is really like to the point, but you don't get a lot of information out of him. That's the project, and I'm really relieved and happy that it's out now.
All right, sounds like a lot of fun. And heck, maybe there's some German speakers and readers here in Canada, and they can order this book. What aspect of his filmography overall, though, are you most interested in? You highlighted a lot of things there, but if you had to distill things a little bit, what would you say it is?
For me, I mean, I have to go back into my childhood because I had like a key experience with the fork, and I'm not alone with this, I guess. I was like 12 years old and I saw the fork on TV with my parents, and it really freaked me out. It was like this, at the same time, beautiful, really dark, but extremely haunting and creepy ghost story. So for me personally, the fork has a key position in my awareness of Carpenter's work. I remember that in the same time, there was The Thing, was shown in the cinema, and everybody knows the tragedy of The Thing being not successful at all when it was launched and becoming a cult classic later. And I was like, when I was 11 in 1982, 1982 is this great geek year, as we now know. There's even like a documentary now on this year, and I totally agree. It was the year of Wolfen, of The Road Warrior, Cat People, and so on, and Blade Runner, and The Thing. So The Thing always stayed in my mind, and I read the novelization of the film first. I think this is also very generational that we were too young to see the films, so we read the novels first. And so my awareness of Carpenter's films was built up gradually with acquiring of home videotapes. And then I saw really like this pan and scan version of Halloween, which is atrocious. And I saw Escape from New York, for example, which was a huge success in Germany as well, because it was really well marketed with a very unique campaign. And most of the films I've seen on video. So for me, there is always an ongoing re-evaluation of Carpenter's films going on through my life, mainly because I was too young to see the original classics on the screen. Now it is possible. And now on this Friday, I actually will promote the book in Nuremberg, and they will show The Thing in a new version on the screen. So I will be able to see this film as it was meant to be, for example, but also a lot of other things. So for me, Carpenter is fascinating as this outlaw of new Hollywood cinema of the 70s. He was like a parallel phenomenon, not belonging to New Hollywood, like William Friedkin and Scorsese and such people. But some of his films have an intensity which can also be seen in the context of this very paranoid cinema of the 70s, which is called New Hollywood. Like, if you see the dialogue and then Assault on Precinct 13, they are like two different versions of a very similar idea of paranoia in society, in a way. While Carpenter's cinema is very outgoing and very action-based and very physical. So for me, Assault, Halloween, Escape from New York, The Thing are really the core of his early career. And there are some films which I enjoyed later. But for example, like Prince of Darkness. Prince of Darkness is a film that grows if you see it again and again, but it's not as closed and perfect as The Thing, for example. And I would blame it to budget reasons, mainly. So I think for his later films, he was not able to get the budgets to create his complete vision. I'm not sure if he would agree, and probably he just doesn't care, and rightfully so. But so if you ask me, the key is between 76 and 82, probably.
Interesting. And how important do you believe his music is in his own films that he makes?
Yeah. For me personally, again, it is the music by John Carpenter is really important because it made me collect film soundtracks in a very, very early age. And again, I read the novels before I saw the films. I bought the music before I saw the films. So I listened to the soundtracks all over again and tried to imagine how these films are. And so I listened to Escape from New York, for example, to the soundtrack like 200 times before I saw the film on video. And it's different with The Fog, where I saw the film and immediately bought the soundtrack. And this piano theme, as you probably might share as an opinion, is like you will never forget it when you first heard it. And even the soundtrack of Halloween, which is quite unnerving, is like unforgettable. So I think you can say that half of the film experience is sound, but it's not always music. And with John Carpenter's films, the music is like 30% of the film. And sometimes it's even more. And so a film like Prince of Darkness might be created on a very low budget, as is They Live, for example. But both films are really like gaining a lot of success with them, with the music, with the soundtracks. And so it's, yeah, for me, still one of the most influential film musicians in film history is John Carpenter, actually, for me personally. And he even influenced what I do as a hobby. I do music myself. And so it was really important to listen to his music. And only a parallel phenomenon I see connected with that is Tangerine Dream. Because again, Tangerine Dream, I heard their music for the first time in Thief by Michael Mann. And this soundtrack never left me. So John Carpenter, Tangerine Dream, story of my life.
Yeah, those Tangerine Dream and John Carpenter music, it really taps into imagination in an interesting way, don't you think?
Imagination, you mean they are inspiring?
Yeah, well, like they seem so creative, and it taps into sort of this almost a sense of wonder, or being sent off almost in like a parallel dimension.
Yeah. Um, it's mainly, I think he was able to create electronic spheres for films which we were not able to hear before. There is probably by Tangerine Dream, the Sorcerer soundtrack from '77 is probably equally important. But and there are probably some giallo thrillers with very avant-garde soundtracks in the '70s. But that was before, and John Carpenter was inspired by that actually, and he admits that. But at the same time, yes, his music is able to trigger our fantasy in a way that where the film images end. For example, in Escape from New York or in Halloween and in Prince of Darkness, you will have huge portions of darkness in the images. And this darkness is filled by our imagination. And this is triggered by the sounds and the music. So, yes, this is his really unique quality, I would say. Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. That's phenomenal. And so going back to Halloween, what do you think? I would love for you to expand a little bit more about your thoughts on Halloween. What do you think makes this such a economically effective film?
I mean, first of all, Halloween was created, if I remember correctly, on an $800,000 budget. It was shot in locations which are not in any way near the place where it is supposed to play in Illinois. So I occasionally came through a street in Los Angeles, where obviously it was shot, where the girls walk along, and I was not aware that this is the street, and I looked it up, and then oh my God, that is the street, and it's the same atmosphere that the film has, and I totally believed it. I always thought, oh, this film was shot in Illinois. Not always, I know now, but because I researched it, but it's a great thing, and they simulated actually the cold weather atmosphere with artificial like autumn leaves in the streets and so on, because Los Angeles has a different climate and so on. So I think, again, the idea of improvising and creating something out of virtually nothing is very present in the making of the film. So I think the idea of imaginative directing is perfect in this film. He has a very small amount of effects as well. So if we see films like Friday the 13th, they have this very well-known makeup effects by Tom Savini, which are still impressive today, as Savini's effects always are. But in Halloween, you have some blood splattering on the windshield or something, but that's it. It's not a splatter film. It is a slasher film technically, but it's not really into that idea of body destruction and so on. So it has more of a suspense thriller. And in this way, it's more connected to like Frenzy by Alfred Hitchcock, for example. So I think you see here a fusion of classical thriller filmmaking, the idea of I have a low budget, but I have a lot of imagination, and I use the music and the sound to replace things, and probably a very perfect casting, because Jamie Lee Curtis and Donald Pleasence are obviously cult figures today, and so this worked really well. So Halloween is definitely a classic of film history. And when I grew up, it was not that clear. Halloween was like this small horror film, which was very successful, but nobody really cared about it. And I said, "Oh, wait, I think that could be very interesting." And now, for me, dealing with film genre theory professionally and academically, this film is really important, and maybe that's the reason. Yeah.
All right. And of course, it has the final girl trope, which many slashers
Oh
would
yeah.
use. What are your thoughts on this trope?
Yeah. So, it was not the first film with a final girl, obviously, because you have films like good, Torso is probably you can discuss it because she is saved actually by a guy, but in Texas Chainsaw Massacre you have a final girl, obviously, but she is out of her mind, obviously, in the end. So Halloween is probably a film which has this proper final girl, which actually manages to survive, and she manages to at least get rid of the killer for the moment. As we see, the killer disappears, so the evil does not die. But so the theory of the final girl, which later occurred in academics and in theories on horror films, um, yeah, I would be able to argue that Halloween has this pioneer position for the first film with a proper final girl construction. And it was repeated then in later films. And there are variations like in Nightmare on Elm Street or in all those franchises, obviously. And even in Friday the 13th, we have this final girl surviving and decapitating the killer, neutrally said. Everybody knows now, but and the final woman and the final girl confronting, and so the the feminist reading of the final girl is that the final girl like is a re-empowerment against a phallic and a patriarchal threat. So the male defined killer is this phallic threat, which is then banned in the end. But as you see in Friday the 13th, we already have a variation of this, as the mother actually is the main threat. And so, yeah, Halloween is kind of a classic film. She is this sexually unexperienced young woman. She has a sexual longing, and she's definitely heterosexual in this sense in 1978. So the film is not that revolutionary in this sense. It's not a queer film or something, but I think it's very explicit in this idea. Yeah? And even if nobody talked about the final girl construct, it is quite a proper yeah, working out of this concept.
Lovely. And that was really interesting about Michael Myers as a phallic figure. He's also referred to as the shape and sort of a personification of the evil of men. I say the rotted man. I don't believe in the term evil,
Mhm.
but even though
Mhm.
it's a lot of horror movies will run with that. So what can you say about the villain Michael Myers as a personification of the rot of man?
For me, it's always very important that the film begins with a child as the child killer who kills his sister, because this is probably the first shock scene in the film more than the killing itself, because the killing is not that explicit as, you know, you mainly see like the knife going down, but not really like a splatter aesthetics or something. But then when they take off the mask and the point of view shot is finished and we cut in the reverse shot, we see this very apathic young boy. And so there is no empathy in this child, and there will be no empathy in the adult. And I think this idea of a human being, a supposed to be human being, which is not able to feel empathy and to be aware of the consequences of actions, is kind of really a threatening idea. So it's really unnerving to like live side by side with a neighbor who is not able to feel any empathy, because you cannot rely on such a person in any human sense. So as this figure concept is adult, it might be even more, even a bigger threat, and the film proves that as a fact. And so there is no psychology. And I think that's a second one, second important aspect, that the killer is not psychologically capable. And so I am not like really skeptical to remake films, but I think Rob Zombie did like the cardinal sin in trying to give this like very pure concept, a psychology, and this psychoanalytical background of the backstory, and this trauma and all these things. Even if his first Halloween film is enjoyable, it's quite an enjoyable and suspenseful film. But I think the key of Michael Myers, as you ask me, in the first film is that he has no personality at all, that he is totally empty. And this emptiness is threatening because we have no idea how to handle this. And so this is how the film works. And I think Halloween 2 doesn't add anything, but it still works on that level. I
Hmm.
always enjoyed Halloween 2. I always liked that film, actually. But it's like just going on. It's the first film just going on for like 90 more minutes, which is fine. And in the later franchise, I'm not so sure about this. I'm not so sure about like Halloween 4 and 5 and 6 and so on until age 20. And then with Reboot by David Gordon Green, this has a kind of a variation in concepts, and especially because it only refers to the first film and blends out everything else. But I don't know. I think time will tell how these films will be considered in future. For now, Michael Myers is the concept of the empty, non-psychological, threatening person in the first and second film.
Oh, yes. All right. And now shifting gears to The Thing, which should be fun. What are the key differences in your mind between the original, The
Mm.
Thing from Another World, and John Carpenter's The Thing?
Yeah, the main difference is obviously that we have a monster actually in the first film, and we have something monstrous which we cannot grasp in the second film. So the first film is not really a true adaptation of the short novel Who Goes There, because in this novel the idea of this genetically mutating alien species is already hinted at, while the first adaptation by Howard Hawks and Christian Nyby is obviously not relying, they didn't trust that concept because probably the audience would not be able to follow that at that time. It is a 50s film, like the Watch the Sky type of invasion film. And so they had to have a monster. And this monster, I mean, for children, it's quite traumatizing, probably, this how it looks. And when it appears, it has a lot of Frankenstein's monster appeal when it actually is there. And it can then be handled with certain kind of very rational weapons. So, John Carpenter's concept is much closer to the short story, which is much more apocalyptic. So, we don't know if this goes well in the end. We don't know what will happen. Probably it is the beginning of the end. And because one of them is infected. And this idea of infection probably is more understandable today than it was in 1982, because obviously we had the pandemic, and we have now developed a huge consciousness of what it means to to have an infection, to be the victim of a pandemic, and something which spreads in a way which is so fast. You would never imagine. And so this scene in the film, from today's viewpoint, is really frightening, as he shows how fast like this is duplicating and then multiplicating. And we know this will be the same with the human population. And so the film, The Thing by John Carpenter, is probably more frightening today than it ever was, in my opinion, at least for me. And it doesn't rely on one monster. It has this monstrous appearance of mutation, and this is also something which was not developed in the 50s, called body horror. The idea of body horror is probably, we have this film, The American Nightmare, which has this strong idea that it comes from the news coverage and experiences in the Vietnam War, and the actual awareness that how a body can be destroyed by different weapons, and what like Agent Orange and phosphor bombs and all this will create of our flesh, which is really a nightmare, an American nightmare, to quote this. And so this is, yeah, the Thing is probably one of those films, along with David Cronenberg's body horror films and Tobe Hooper's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that refers to this idea of the vulnerable and mutatable human body. So I think that's the main difference to the 50s.
Yes. I felt like one of the key differences is The Thing from Another World is like a Red Scare movie, and The Thing to me it's like this existential issue of trust and paranoia. Since you don't know where the thing is, and
Absolutely.
anyone and everyone could be a part of the thing.
Yeah,
Where
definitely, because it comes
yeah,
from within. There is this great sentence in the promotional campaign: "Man is the warmest place to hide." I love this
yeah,
sentence, and because it's
there you
true.
go.
It's actually true. Directly along with "In space, no one can hear you scream," which is also true. Uh, and
Is sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
I just want to agree with you that the 70s cinema, I called it before, New Hollywood 70s cinema is kind of a paranoid cinema. And
Hmm.
this is not only for the paranoia thrillers by Alan J. Pakula. This is obvious. Everybody knows that. But the Parallax View and so on. But it's also a deep rooted psychological paranoid worldview which infused those films. And this is also goes for Scorsese's Taxi Driver or even Jaws, and obviously The Exorcist and all films by William Friedkin. William Friedkin creates this paranoid cinema, and I think John Carpenter with Assault, Halloween, and The Thing is very close to this as well.
Oh, that's really interesting. So, is that fatalistic notion of trust in the thing appealing to you as a thinker as well as a viewer?
I am uh, absolutely advocating for cinema as a medium of philosophy. So, cinema is not like this analytical philosophy medium, or it is not that rational as like a pure philosopher would probably go for in an academic sense. But film can deal with it on a very associative and very metaphorical level. And I think The Thing makes you think. um, it makes sense, and it makes you think about the human condition. It makes you think about the meaning of human beings in the evolution context, and especially about the end, the probable end of humanity. Because obviously, humanity is not the most important era in world history so far. We have to prove that. But it's very short compared to like the ages the Earth is old as a planet. And so we have, it's very relative. Um, what we represent as human beings on Earth. So if you see it this way, the film can be a starting point, and it is actually a starting point. I've read there is one philosophical book which is mainly based on The Thing and In the Mouth of Madness and Prince of Darkness, actually. I have to check this out. Maybe I can send you a mail
Sure.
later because it's
Yeah.
really fascinating. It's a best book about the thing which I've read, and it's really close to how the film is made because the film has this great ideas of point of views which are not really which you cannot really relate to certain beings. You don't know, is it the dog? Is it already the thing in the dog? And which walks through the corridors. And you have this great music, which is funny in itself, that Ennio Morricone created a soundtrack in the style of John Carpenter. So why didn't he do it himself? But anyway, and the soundtrack is really great. It's one of my favorite Morricone soundtracks as well, with this pulsating rhythm, this heartbeat rhythm that goes through the whole film. And so there's this gazes, the sounds, and we are really uneasy and really not sure about our own humanity in the end.
Oh, yes. Sometimes when I read something by, let's say, Arthur Schopenhauer, I'll get a cold chill run down my spine. Go, ooh, that's intense. That was neat. Does that mention fatalism somewhat fall in line with some of the more fatalistic or brutal German philosophers out there, in your opinion?
Um, I mean, you can always try to adopt certain philosophical models like Schopenhauer and Nietzsche and so on, and apply it to films, which is legit and can be inspirational. But I would not be the one to say John Carpenter had this in mind when he made the film. And I didn't ask him actually, and probably he didn't have this in mind, but he is able, and that's more important. For me, it's more important that he, as a filmmaker, was able to get an idea what was in the air at that time, and still is probably, and to create images and sounds which bring that to a certain point where we are able to experience that. And this experience is much more important than applying certain intellectual models, as you mentioned. And I would agree, but I think it's more important that the film is able to create this out of its own images and sounds. And that's the quality of the thing.
Yes, it's nothing to do with intention. It's just like as a consumer completely,
As a
you know, like,
reading, yeah, as a reading,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
And there is probably, I mean, there are a lot of postmodern philosophers, which I am aware of, like Mark Fisher, for example, who were dealing with this uncertainty, with uh, this post-Baudrillard world of simulation. And so we are not sure, is this true? Is it real? Is it simulation? Is there a physical reality, or is it like everything is dissolved in a way? And Mark Fisher, who is unfortunately is not with us anymore, he wrote a lot about David Lynch, for example, covering these things. He wrote about the concept of hauntology, of this idea that we live in a world of ghosts, and our world is dominated by this ghostly beings and ghost sounds. And I would say the soundtracks of John Carpenter could be part of this hauntological sound world as well, especially the music from Prince of Darkness, which is the best about the film for me. I'm listening to this soundtrack like regularly, and so it also makes sense that Carpenter has now his records out on the label Sacred Bones Records, because Sacred Bones is a label really longing for this hauntological sounds in other bands and other projects and composers, and so it totally comes like into place now. It's like a puzzle which now makes sense if we see it from the distance, and that's probably my angle, my philosophical angle to get closer to this. Is that like? Can you follow
Of
that?
course. Yeah. Also, I would love to get your reaction. I don't know, or maybe you already know this. How do you think this fits in that John Carpenter is now going to do the horror film, do a soundtrack to a horror film by Bong Joon-ho?
Oh yeah, yeah. Um, I mean, he did the soundtrack music for Firestarter before, and this really worked well. So, I mean, for me, makes sense because his on the first side, it would appear that it is below his expectations, like being a very significant director in film history and then composing music for another director, which who came later, basically. But now he has two careers, actually. He has this career as this important filmmaker, and then he switched a little bit to being an important musician of minimalist electronic music. And I mean, he creates these great lost themes records, which I really enjoy. And I mean, when if I was a filmmaker, I would actually ask him to do the music. Why not? I mean, it's perfect. And I think again, have you seen Firestarter, the new
No,
version?
I haven't seen that. No.
Yeah, I think it's the third version now, and this I enjoyed it because Karim Hussein, the Canadian director of photography, has made a really beautiful images, and there's this music by John Carpenter. So the film is really enjoyable. It doesn't really work as probably as a film. There are some flaws, but so it will definitely work, even with Bong Joon-ho.
Oh, heck yes. Great. All right. Well, Marcus, thanks so much for your time. It was a lot of fun talking to you today about your book and specifically Halloween and the Thing.
Yeah.
What is the best reason for people to check out this John Carpenter book of yours?
The best reason, I mean, in Germany, the first edition is already sold out, so we're printing the second one. The first edition had, I have to say, this homage to John Carpenter's music as a CD included, so it's highly collectible. It is this. It has a lot of great photos and all these promotional campaigns, which you can will be able to follow if you see, so especially the German campaigns, how the films were marketed. It's quite unique, I think. And you have deep rooting analytical essays. So if you are like interested in more than just a listing of films and description of content, it is definitely the German book to go for. And there's actually one translation. Paul Poet has translated his text from Troy Howarth book on John Carpenter. So
Oh,
he had a contribution there, and it's also in here in German. So we have a connection, and greetings to Troy Howarth as well. Um, yeah, he's obviously aware of it.
yeah.
And
Oh,
it's
yeah.
so there's a great connection. If you're German language able, it is the book to go. If you're a collector of John Carpenter stuff, it is probably also it's not really expensive, so it's also worth it just for the images and for the CD in the first edition. And yeah, probably that's hopefully enough
That's
reasons.
a lot. There's a bunch of reasons that good reasons. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, it was my pleasure. It was quite inspiring talking about this, like just like that.
Yeah,
Great.
it's fun.
Yeah. Thank you. Let's do it again.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you for watching. All right.